Morning, everyone. Good morning. Starting a new week. Let's see how many days we can do this because there's a lot of work to do before Passover. Let's start by giving charity. Charity gives blessing, and it takes away all of the things which are opposite of blessings. Charity even prevents death. And charity is what brings the Gula. And let's give a praise to the Creator of the universe. Hodu la Hashem ki tov ki la'olam chazdo. Let us praise the Creator of the universe because He's good, and to the world, and to is His eternal good. And now let's start to learn. We'll do a half an hour of each. Ready? Let's go. Here's a speech given by the Lubavitcher Rebbe in 1975. Yud Aleph Nisan. Yud Aleph Nisan, that's today. It's the birthday of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Birthday of Lubavitcher Rebbe. Vigadat Labincha. There's a sentence in the Torah. There's a sentence in the Torah that tells us that we must relate the story of going out of Egypt. It's a commandment to talk about it on the night of Passover. In fact, there's a commandment every day we're supposed to remember going out of Egypt. It's a commandment remembering every day to go out of Egypt. But it's a special commandment to do it on Passover night. On Passover night to say it. And there's even a little book which is called the Haggadah. And in it was arranged about 1,000 years ago, sentences and paragraphs to say regarding going out of Egypt, how God took us out of Egypt, how the situation was difficult, terrible, suffering, and we got out with big miracles, etc. And we're supposed to remember this, and the Jews have been doing this faithfully for 3,330, I guess 8 years, huh? No, up to here we go. We got it, and the sentence goes like this. Sentences like this. It's in Exodus. You want to look it up? It's in Exodus, in Parshas Bo, Exodus 13:8. Here's the commandment. Now, of course, this is only a commandment to the Jewish people. Almost all the commandments in the Torah are to the Jewish people. You can learn the 7 Noahide commandments out that they're mentioned in a very sort of a how do you say, a way which has to be learned from the Torah. But all the commandments in the Torah are to the Jews. The Torah was given to the Jews. In fact, that's the whole goal of going out of Egypt, was to receive the Torah. Until the Jews received the Torah, really the going out of Egypt hadn't really begun, actually. It hadn't really, that was the sum total of the woman. Okay. He got it to Lebincha, and you should tell to your son, Bayomahu, on that day, Lamor, saying, Ba'avur zeh, because of this, Asa Hashem li b'tzeiti Mitzrayim. Because of this, God did to me when He took me out of Egypt. What is the this? What is the this? You have to say it. This is talking about, you're supposed to point to the morer, the matzah, and the wine and the morer, especially the matzah and the morer, not the wine. Because of this, this is the main thing of the talking about going out of Egypt. But Leil Pesach, on the night of Passover, that's going to be this year. It's going to be Wednesday night. Outside of Israel, it's Wednesday and Thursday night. Shenikra, it's called Haggadah. Therefore, the book that we read from is called the Haggadah, and it's through it we do the commandment of talking about going out of Egypt. V'nikra b'simone aseder b'shem Magid. It's called Magid. If you look in the beginning, there's 15 words that stand for the different stages of the Haggadah. There's 15 stages, and the first is Magid. In the beginning is Magid. Kadesh Urachatz, Magid says, first of all, you make Kiddush, you wash your hands, and then Yachatz, and then you do Magid. Magid means you talk about going out of Egypt. That's the commandment. It's a commandment from the Torah, like eating matzah is. And this is called Magid al Shem Haggadah. That's why it's called the Haggadah. Va'ad until Lakama Deod, until some opinions. Harizem Ikre Achilukim. That's the main difference between talking about going out of Egypt the night of Passover and remembering going out of Egypt, Kol Hashana, the whole rest of the year. Shahari Chayavim, because it's an obligation for every Jew to remember going out of Egypt every day. And some say in the daytime and in the nighttime. When we say Shema Yisrael says, I am God that took you out of Egypt. This whole story about going out of Egypt, the night of Passover, it has to be in a way that he got it to Labincha, that you tell it to your children. And if you haven't got any children, you tell it to your wife. If you haven't got a wife, you're sitting alone, you tell it to yourself. But you have to say the words out loud. But Pasuk Zeh, this sentence, Shabon Ne'amar, then it says, Higarta, that you must say, because that's the Haggadah of Passover. Eno Ma'aneh, it does not really answer the question of the son. Okay, there's 4 times in the Torah that actually say that you have to say over. You have to relate the story of going out of Egypt. That imply. And it's the answer, it says the 4 sons. That's how also the Haggadah starts off, the 4 sons. It says, first of all, there's a wise son. Then there is an evil son. Then there's the son, a simple son. And then there's the son that doesn't know how to ask. Doesn't know how to ask. He just sits there like a... So it says that the first son, he says, what are all these commandments and everything that we're doing tonight? What are all the commandments? And then the evil son, he says, what is all this to you? And the simple son says, just what is this? And the son that doesn't know how to ask, he doesn't ask. And this is the answer to the son that doesn't know how to ask. What do you say? Because of this, God took me out of Egypt. You say, because of this, God took me out of Egypt. Because of the matzah that is in front of us. Okay, so let's just start off with one little preface over here, and that is that the Jewish people, the basis of the Jewish people is totally incomparable. No other nation, religion, whatever, race, even made up such a story. Right? Never even made up such a story. What's the story that we've got? We Jewish people claim, and we've been claiming this nonstop for 3,300 years, that we were slaves in Egypt for 210 years. The whole entire nation was born in Egyptian slavery. And that all of a sudden came along a person called Moses, and he said, you're going out. You're getting out. And sure enough, he took us out of Egypt. How did he take us out of Egypt? There were 10 plagues. And we got out, then the sea split. And the Jews got to Mount Sinai. And 50 days later, after we got out of Egypt, God gave us the Torah. God. All the Jewish people saw God. They all heard God. They all felt God. God personally gave them this book. They saw it. It was all through Moses. Moses did it, but the Jewish people, each and every individual saw it and felt it. What did they feel? God. And not just God up in heaven, and they all had the spiritual experience. It was a very non-spiritual experience. It was a very physical, mundane experience. God himself destroyed the greatest superpower, maybe in the history of the world. It says that power ruled over the whole world. Personally, and the Jews had absolutely no power whatsoever. They had no weapons, they had no plans, they had no secret, whatever it is, beepers or something that they gave to the Egyptians and blew up. They had absolutely no power whatsoever. God did the whole business himself. And that's the basis of Judaism. Not only the basis of Judaism, it's the basis of the Jewish people. That's the Jewish people. And from then, the Jews eventually they went to Israel, after 40 years later, and then there was exiles and they got scattered all over the world. That's why I got all these different Jews that look different. But even back then, there were the 12 tribes of the Jewish people. So each tribe was different. All of them all together, there was about 3 million people that got out of Egypt. 600,000 males from the age of 20 upward. And that's not counting the children. Okay, so let's get this thing straight now. In other words, this is an absolute 100% infallible proof that God exists. They all saw it. There was a whole, they had one whole year of experiences of God. All the 10 plagues, they were eating bread from heaven. They saw God speak at Mount Sinai. So everyone saw, everyone felt, everyone was certain that God exists, no doubt whatsoever. Did it work? Not for very long. It says that 40 days after they received the Torah, they say contradicted everything it says in the Torah. Everything. They worshiped the golden calf, which that's contradicts the whole entire business. Idolatry is the total opposite of the whole point of the Torah, the opposite of Judaism, the opposite of common sense. Well, maybe not. Maybe guess not. I mean, it's common sense because they all saw God and they felt God, and God said, just don't worship idols, and they all did it. So we see the power of God. We see the power and the love of God and the care of God for the Jewish people. But we also see the power of free choice is even greater. God does not want to take away our free choice. So he gave us free choice. We can do what we want to. And that's what we're celebrating on Passover, that we, with our free will, are remembering that the main point of Passover is that there is God and we should do what he wants. Huh? Not just that he's there and it's nice and we remember it once a year, and then the rest of the year we do what we want. Talking about going out of Egypt has to be in a way that you talk to your children. You have to say it. But the sentence, what it says, he got it to Lebincha, to the child that he's asking. The child is asking. Which child is asking? The child that doesn't know what to ask. We'll see in a second. It says, Eina Mana. It doesn't answer the question of the son, because this is talking about in a sentence before that, when your son asks tomorrow, what is this? So the answer is in Lashon of Amarta and not in Haggadah. It says you should say and not to tell. Therefore, the rabbis say that this is talking about the son that doesn't know how to ask any questions. This is the answer or the reply or the response to the child that doesn't know what to ask, right? The wise son asks a question. The evil son is number 2. He asked this also question. The third son, that is the simple son, asks a simple question. And the fourth son, the father says, no, what about you? And he says, so therefore his father says, because of this, God took us out of Egypt. This comes and teaches you that you have to start off with him. You have to begin him. You have to, encourage him. It says, at patachlo. It says, you answer him. He doesn't ask any questions, so you have to instigate the conversation. You got to tell Labincha, and you have to tell your son. Because of this, God did to me when he took me out of Egypt. Because of this, because of the matzah, he wants me to do commandments. Okay, Sorech Lahavin, we have to understand. By the way, I know we've said this a lot of times, but I want to say it again. Judaism is the only religion. There's a lot of religions in the world. They all have rituals and they all have customs and they all have ceremonies and they all have their heritage and they all have this and their signs that they wear and the things like this, but none of them have commandments. The only religion that has commandments, God told us to do exactly this, is Judaism. There is no other commandments. And that's why God took us out of Egypt, to do the commandments. When did we really get the commandments? In Mount Sinai. But the fact is we had commandments before that, and one of them is what we're doing tonight, eating the matzah. And also telling over the story. That was also a commandment. But Tzarech Lab, we have to understand, what is the reason that we make the main thing, the son, why is it we make this whole Haggadah He got it to Lebincha. We call the name of the whole thing the Haggadah, and that's the reply. And it's not really a reply, it's like the response to the son that doesn't even know how to ask. And the son just sits there, the fourth son sits there and says, "You got any questions?" It's true that they're talking about going out of Egypt. It has to be also to children or Jews that don't know how to even ask the question. But the main thing of the going out of Egypt and talking about going out of Egypt, it should have been to the wise son, the son that really wants to know. He's wise, he's got questions. And this it says, when your son asks you tomorrow, say, what are these commandments? That's the question of the wise son. The wise son says, what are all these laws, these statutes, these the practices that God commanded you to do? That the wise son, that's the wise son, that's his question. That's a good question. He says, I want a spiritual, Kabbalistic explanation on all these different laws, on the matzah and the morer and, and this, right? Why we lean over, why we do all these things. That's a good question. He's got questions at least. That's the wise son. And the evil son says, what are you doing all this? What are you wasting all your time for? And the simple son says, what is this? And the son that doesn't know what to ask, doesn't ask. He doesn't even ask at all. So you have to deal with children like that also. Special needs children. But the main thing of the Haggadah should be to the wise son. He has some good questions. But it isn't. The main thing of the Haggadah is to this child that doesn't know how to ask. Not only that. I'm sorry. The main answer should be to the wise son. Not only does the wise son understand the general topic where we are, what we're talking about, but even more, he knows the details. He knows that there's edut, there's chukim, and there's mishpatim. Generally speaking, edut are religious laws. Like, for instance, eating matzah. Chukim are laws that make no sense whatsoever. Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Why is chametz forbidden? Who says what's wrong with eating? That's chukim. Laws that make no sense. In Judaism, there's three types of laws. There's religious laws. There's nonsensical laws. Laws which don't make any sense at all. Right? Don't eat milk and meat together. Don't boil milk and meat. And then there is what's called mishpatim, logical laws. Don't kill, don't steal. So on the night of Passover, we have all these three together. Logical laws. We got out of Egypt. It's logical. We should talk about it. Right? Big miracle. So the wise son knows all these details. He just wants to know more about them. That's the main point of the Haggadah, right? Wrong. The main point of the Haggadah is to answer the child that doesn't even ask. It's also known that the wise son, he also knows the different what the different types of commandments are, and he also knows about the Jewish people. This is all the commandments that God commanded you. Bashal, and he's asking questions, and he wants to know what's the connection between them. What are the edut that God commanded you? And nevertheless, he says the language of Haggadah, this whole thing called Haggadah, is not called because of we answer the wise son or the evil son. It's because the son that doesn't know what to ask. We also have to understand, why does it say on that day? Because of this. Let's go back to the original. You should say to your son, on that day. What do you mean that day? You should say, because of this, God took me out of Egypt. But we point to the matzah. Because of this, God took me out of Egypt. What does it mean? You should tell your son on that day. On what day? The day that he asks. We're talking about the son that doesn't ask. He doesn't ask. So what does it mean? You should tell your son on that day. It should just say very simply, you should tell your son that because of this, what is this thing? Ba'avur's on that day, you should say. What's it? Now these words is a quote from the Torah, and the Torah is written by God. God himself wrote, God took the Jews out of Egypt. God gave them the Torah. God wrote the Torah. These are God's words. So every letter is exact. If there's one letter missing from the Torah, then the whole entire Torah is disqualified until you fix it. So every single letter, how much more so every word is necessary. So what does it mean? You should tell your son on that day, Bayomahu. What is that day? And then what do you tell him? Because of this, because of the matzah, that's why God took us out of it. Okay, so let's see. Are the other commandments? Or at first glance, even since that the sentence is very talking about ba'avur zeh, because of this, namely, it's only when there is matzah and moror in front of you that that's what it means ba'avur zeh. You're supposed to point with your finger and you say zeh, this, because of this, because of the matzah. If so, this is a set day. It's a day where we have to have matzah in front of us. So why does it say? You should say on that day, Bayom Hahu. It just said you should tell him because of this. What does it mean? You should tell him on that day. Which day are we talking about? Obviously, the day that you have matzah in front of you. That's Passover, obvious. So it should say because of this day, maybe. What is that day? We also have to understand what it says. When I left Egypt, it says. So again, you should tell your son on that day, say that because of this, God did to me when he took me out of Egypt. When he took me out of Egypt. Who's saying this? The father is telling his son. He says, on that day, you should say because of this, that God took me out of Egypt. That's what it says in the Torah. What does it mean because he took me out of Egypt? What is it? The Lechiora, but say Tim in Mitzrayim, going out of Egypt, that should be the beginning. The God took us out of Egypt and he gave us the matzah, and therefore we have to tell Shari Kavari Tchila, at the beginning of at the Seder, there is already a question and the answer, which is talking about going out of Egypt. The son knows that we left Egypt. That's why we're sitting there in the nighttime. Why does it have to repeat in the Torah and say, because of this, God did it because when he took me out of Egypt? Obviously, because of this, matzah and more, the son knows that when do we eat matzah and more and sitting around talking about going out of Egypt? You should just, it should say, you're the son that doesn't know how to ask. This way it should say, right? If we wrote the Torah, it should say like this, and you should tell your son that because of this, that God did to me. Or actually, it shouldn't even say me, it should have said that God did to us. Because of this, what God did to us, right? The son knows we're talking about going out of Egypt. That's why we're sitting there like that. Why does he have to repeat? God did to us when he took us out of Egypt. Okay, these questions and much more we're going to answer. So let's go a little bit further. Obira Inyan, explanation is like this. The Ina Yadu, it's known that the whole big novelty of going out of Egypt that in this we compare the going out of Egypt, we equate the going out of Egypt to this exile that we're in now. Legabi Agulot, and regarding the redemptions from the other exiles. What other exiles were the Jewish people in? The Jewish people went out of Egypt, right? And then they went into Israel, and they were there in Israel for like 800 years. And then came the Babylon and destroyed the first temple. Right? The first temple was built like 440 years after the Jews went into Israel. And then 410 years later came Nebuchadnezzar from Babylon and he destroyed the first temple. So that was the second exile. Egypt was the first, Babylon was the second exile. And then after that, the Jewish people were in exile 70 years in Babylon and they got out. So that's the second redemption. They went into Israel and they built the temple. And then there came the Greeks. That's the whole holiday of Passover, of Hanukkah. There came the Greeks, and the Greeks took over the temple, they took over the whole business, and we got free from them. That was the second redemption. That's the third redemption. And then there came the Romans, and the Romans destroyed the second temple, and now presently we are in the fourth exile. And soon there's going to be the fourth redemption. That's Moshiach is going to. Okay, so when we left Egypt, we never went back. Never went back. On the other exiles, we did go back. We'll see. It says regarding going out from other exiles is different. And all the other exiles, we went back to the place where we were exiled to. When we left Egypt, no Jew remained in Egypt and no Jew went back to Egypt. Well, I guess later on they sort of did. That's the big novelty. And not so much pertaining to the Jewish people themselves, that for whatever reason, a Jew might have needed to return in Egypt or to remain in Egypt. When it came the time to go out of Egypt, everybody left. Regarding to the Jewish people, there was nothing in Egypt that the Jews had to go back for. Okay, so here we got a big secret over here. And it's called the secret of raising up the sparks. This is the big secret, mystery of the world. Why Jewish people have to suffer, why we have to do all these, why have to do the commandments. What's the whole business going on? Why not just make a world a normal world? Why do you have to make a Jewish world if the people, the Jews are outnumbered like 500 to 1 and everybody hates them and they get kicked out and the Jews themselves don't even want to be Jews and they go, why make a world so confusing like this? Why? It says because the whole purpose is to raise up the spirit, to perfect the world. God wants this world to be perfect. In the language of the Midrash, says, God wants that this world should be fixed up as a dwelling for him. That's what he wants. In order to do that, we got to clean the world up and we have to arrange it in the proper order, the whole world. How do we do that? There's three ways: doing good, turning from bad, and weathering, going through tests, difficulties, called nisyonot. So it says the fact that the Jews went into Egypt, Egypt ruled over the whole world. So there was tremendous power in Egypt. The Jewish people went into Egypt in order to put that power of Egypt in its proper place, to attach it to the Creator. That's called raising up the sparks. Like it says in the Gemara, it says Vayanatzlu et Mitzrayim, that the Jewish people left Egypt. It says Vayanatzlu, strange language. It says Asu kemitzula she'ein bodagin. They made it like a fish pond that has no fish, and mitzudan like a silo, where they keep grain that hasn't got any grain in it. They emptied it out. They took out of Egypt all of the things that were connected to the Jewish people. Like the Baal Shem Tov said and the Rava Magid, when they said Torah chasa al mamono shel Yisrael, that the Torah was, cared about the money of the Jewish people. What does it mean? That this is because the sparks of holiness which were in the relevant to the soul of each person that are relevant to money. That's the whole big novelty of going out of Egypt. The Jewish people took out all the money. Why did they have to take out all the money? What do they care about money? What do they need the money for in the desert? God provided them everything they needed. It's because the money had sparks of holiness, sparks of meaning in it. That the Jewish people could have gone out of Egypt. Nevertheless, maybe you could say that there were some sparks of holiness there, and afterwards the Jewish people would have to go back to Egypt. Not in a way of exile, but in a way of freeness, in order to refine them, like in all the other exiles. Golas Bavel, it says when the exile, it says Madai, Greece, and Pras, and it says in Yovan, and that's media, it says in Pras and in Greece. There's different ways of counting what the exiles are. Anyway, Shenisha Rusham, that there remained over there sparks of holiness, that the Jews had to elevate them. And they came to the land of Israel, and they would come bring them to the land of Israel. But in Egypt, there wasn't any. But why? What's the proof? And afterwards, they went back to Babylon. And Babylon, it says they went from one place to another in order to complete the service of sparks. But in Egypt, it says you're not allowed to go back to Egypt. But in Egypt, there was in a way, Shalonish Aru, there were no sparks there at all. Shaloch, and it says, Lo Sosifali Rotam. It says the Egyptians, you're not allowed to go back. You won't see them anymore. It says the Egyptians were all destroyed. And the places, 3 places that the Jewish people are warned not to go back to, it says, there's 3 places in the Torah where it says you're not supposed to go back to Egypt. Even though later on the Jews did go back, but it was unnecessary. Even though the going of a Jew to any place in the world is only because God wants you to go there, the same tachlit matara, for some sort of a purpose. The cave and since in the land of Egypt, Nifalu, they already brought about all of the refinement of the Jewish people in Egypt. Like it says clearly, that they took out, they cleaned out Egypt. There was no holiness left in Egypt whatsoever. Therefore, the Egypt today is totally not any connection to the Egypt that was back then. And therefore, even though I guess there are a few sphinxes over there. Therefore, it's forbidden in the Torah. You're not supposed to go back to Egypt, even in a free way. It says you're not supposed to. And the Arizal explains it very deeply. But Cain also, it also will be in the future redemption by Mashiach. And it says, just like the days of going out of Egypt, I will show you miracles. It's the prophet Micha. Shakal and Yanim, that all the things which are bad will go away. Not only will there not be any more physical Egypt, there won't be any more spiritual Egypt, which that's what we're going to talk about in a moment. The fact is since we left Egypt 3,300 whatever years ago, until today, every day is still another step in going out of Egypt. Like it says, I will take away the spirit of impurity from the world, and all the sparks of holiness will be gathered up by means of the Jewish people, like it says, and you will all be gathered up together. It's a sentence in Isaiah, right? Let's see, I have a sentence over here, 24. There it goes, 24. Isaiah. No. Yeah, Isaiah 27. Says that God will gather up not only all the Jews, but all the reasons that the Jews are in exile. That's why all the Jews will leave all these places that they're scattered around, Jews that don't even know they're Jews. They'll be scattered because the Jews, wherever they are, is in order to use whatever there is in that place for the Creator. And it won't be necessary anymore. Every place in the world will have been refined. Each and every Jew, therefore, will all be gathered together to the land of Israel with all the sparks of holiness that are relevant to that particular Jew. And by means of this will be the complete redemption. Because there won't remain any sparks, any reasons for the Jews. What is a spark? A spark is basically the use of a thing. As soon as a thing which is not usable anymore, let's say you have a cup and it's got a big hole on the bottom of it, there's no use, so you throw it away. But it's got a use, it means that if you can connect it to a person. Well, if that person happens to be a Jew and that Jew happens to be connected to God, so you connect the physical things to God, that makes the whole world suddenly more meaningful. It says that's what's going to be the idea of Mashiach. Everything in the world will be refined, and then everything will be in a way of holiness. So, I mean, you can ask a question, a lot of questions will be answered. Like, for instance, why did the Jews have to suffer in the Holocaust? Why? So, of course, there is no answer to that now. But it says Mashiach will somehow or other explain that there were some sort of sparks that had to be elevated by the Jewish people. Who knows? But nevertheless, the only reason that the Jews are wherever they are and whatever happens to them is in order to refine these sparks of holiness. Well, when the Jews left Egypt, they did a total cleaning of Egypt. Egypt remained sterile from all these sparks. There's no reasons for Jews to be there to this very day. Okay, that's talking about going out of Egypt, and there's more to come, which we'll talk about, God willing, tomorrow.